Emily Roberts clutched her boarding pass, her fingers tracing the creases nervously as she made her way down the narrow airplane aisle. The British Airways flight hummed with the quiet murmur of passengers settling into their seats, a typical Wednesday morning journey from Manchester to London. At 35, Emily was no stranger to traveling for work. Her crisp navy blazer and carefully pressed white shirt spoke of professionalism, while the worn leather portfolio tucked under her arm hinted at years of hard-earned experience. She was an aerospace engineer, a title she had fought tooth and nail to achieve. As she approached her seat, she noticed the businessman sitting next to her. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with an expensive watch and a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. His name was James Thompson, though Emily hadn't spoken to him yet. The plane was nearly full. Outside the small oval window, ground crew moved about like tiny ants, preparing the aircraft for departure. Emily took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. Today was important. She had a critical presentation that could change everything for her career. James shifted in his seat, pulling out a financial magazine and spreading it wide. His elbow nudged slightly into Emily's personal space, but she said nothing. She was used to making herself smaller, of not taking up too much room. As the plane began to taxi, Emily noticed James glancing her way. She could almost feel the quick assessment, the way his eyes judged her appearance, her position, her very existence in this professional space. It was a look she knew all too well. The aircraft's engines roared to life, pushing them down the runway. Emily closed her eyes, remembering the journey that had brought her here. Growing up in a small working-class neighborhood, she had been the first in her family to go to university. Her father, a factory worker with calloused hands and a heart of gold, had always told her that education was the great equalizer. "You can be anything you want," he would say. "Your mind is your greatest weapon." Those words had been her shield against every doubt, every sideways glance, every subtle hint that she didn't belong in the world of aerospace engineering. She had studied harder, worked longer, proved herself more than anyone else. The plane lifted into the sky, Manchester shrinking beneath them. Clouds wrapped around the aircraft like cotton wool, soft and comforting. Emily felt a moment of peace, a rare feeling of possibility. James returned to his magazine, occasionally muttering something under his breath. Emily caught fragments, something about diversity quotas, about people getting positions they didn't deserve. Her back stiffened, but she remained outwardly calm. She knew this game. She had played it her entire professional life. The subtle comments, the implied limitations, the quiet suggestions that she was somehow less capable. But Emily was more than used to proving people wrong. Her portfolio contained designs that could revolutionize aircraft efficiency. Months of research, countless sleepless nights, and unwavering dedication were tucked into those carefully prepared documents. Today's presentation could change everything, not just for her, but potentially for the entire industry. The flight continued, a metal bird carrying dreams and possibilities. Emily looked out the window, watching the world below, tiny fields, winding roads, the landscape of opportunity stretching out beneath her. She thought about her mother, who had worked multiple jobs to support her education. She thought about her colleagues who had encouraged her, who had seen her potential when others had not. She thought about every woman who had been told she couldn't, who had been pushed aside, who had been made to feel small. This journey was more than a simple business trip. It was a statement. It was proof. As the plane continued its steady path towards London, Emily Roberts sat quietly. Prepared. Confident. Ready to show the world exactly who she was. Her story was just beginning. The aircraft hummed with a steady rhythm, carrying passengers through the clouds. James Thompson continued to flip through his magazine, occasionally muttering under his breath. Emily Roberts, seated next to him, remained outwardly calm, but her ears caught every subtle comment. "Diversity hires," James mumbled, just loud enough for her to hear. "These days, anyone can get a position." Emily's fingers gripped the edge of her portfolio. She had heard these words before, countless times throughout her career. They were like familiar, unwelcome guests that kept showing up uninvited. Her mind drifted back to her childhood in Manchester. She remembered her small, cramped home where dreams were bigger than the living room. Her father, a factory worker with weathered hands and kind eyes, had always been her greatest supporter. "Education is your ticket," he would tell her. "No one can take knowledge away from you." Those words had been her shield against every doubt, every sideways glance, every silent judgment. She had studied harder, worked longer, proved herself more than anyone else. While other kids her age were going out, Emily was buried in books, dreaming of designing aircraft that would change the world. University had been a challenge. She was often the only woman in her engineering classes. The looks, the whispers, the subtle attempts to make her feel out of place, she had endured them all. Each challenge was another step towards her dream. James continued his quiet commentary, unaware of the strength sitting beside him. He represented a world that Emily knew too well, a world of quiet assumptions and hidden barriers. But she had learned to navigate these waters with grace and determination. Her current project was revolutionary. A new aircraft design that could reduce fuel consumption by 30%. Months of research, countless simulations, and sleepless nights had gone into this work. Today's presentation could change everything, not just for her, but for the entire aviation industry. The flight attendant walked by, offering drinks. James accepted a coffee, while Emily opted for water. She could feel the weight of her potential, the strength of her preparation. Her mother had worked multiple jobs to support her education. Every extra shift, every sacrifice was a stepping stone to this moment. Emily remembered the nights her mother would come home exhausted, but still find time to ask about her studies. "You're going to do something special," her mother would say. "Something that matters." Those words echoed in Emily's mind as the plane continued its journey. She thought about every woman who had been told she couldn't, who had been pushed aside, who had been made to feel small. James continued his quiet remarks, unaware that Emily heard every word. But she had learned long ago that words were just words. Her work, her skills, her dedication, these were the things that truly spoke volumes. The landscape below changed, green fields giving way to urban sprawl. London was approaching, and with it, the opportunity to prove herself once again. Emily took a deep breath. She knew that today was more than just a presentation. It was a statement. A declaration that talent knows no boundaries, that excellence is not determined by gender or background. Her portfolio contained more than just technical designs. It contained her journey, her struggles, her triumphs. Each page was a testament to her resilience, her unwavering commitment to her craft. The plane began its descent, London's skyline emerging through the clouds. James had fallen silent, seemingly lost in his own thoughts. Emily remained composed, her mind focused on the opportunity ahead. She was more than ready. She was prepared to show the world exactly who she was. Her story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning to take flight. The airplane's interior suddenly changed when a sharp cry broke the monotonous hum of conversation. An elderly gentleman in the middle section of the aircraft collapsed, his body slumping into the narrow aisle. People froze. Panic started to spread like a quiet wave through the cabin. Flight attendants looked worried, their professional training battling with clear uncertainty about the situation. Emily's engineering background had prepared her for more than just aircraft design. She had taken multiple emergency response courses, understanding that technical skills were about more than just machines, they were about understanding complex systems, including human biology. Without hesitation, she unbuckled her seatbelt. James watched in surprise as she moved swiftly, her movements precise and calculated. Her navy blazer shifted as she knelt beside the fallen passenger, her hands already checking his vital signs. "Sir, can you hear me?" She called clearly, her voice steady and authoritative. The elderly man was barely responsive. His breathing was shallow, and his skin looked pale. Emily quickly assessed the situation, her mind racing through potential medical scenarios. "I need a medical kit," she called to the nearest flight attendant. "And ask if there's a doctor on board." Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. She checked his pulse, examined his breathing, and began to position him in a recovery position. Years of emergency training kicked in, transforming her from an aerospace engineer into a potential lifesaver. James watched, completely stunned. The woman he had been quietly criticizing moments ago was now displaying extraordinary skill and composure. His earlier remarks seemed small and insignificant in the face of her quick action. The flight attendants brought the medical kit. Emily worked methodically, checking the man's pulse, ensuring his airway remained clear. Her technical mind approached the human body like a complex machine, understanding systems, identifying potential failures, and implementing immediate solutions. "He's experiencing what seems like a cardiac event," she explained to the flight crew. "We need to keep him stable until we can get medical assistance." Her fingers moved quickly, preparing for potential CPR if required. The other passengers watched in silent admiration, their earlier conversations forgotten in the face of this unexpected drama. James leaned forward, his previous attitude completely transformed. The woman he had dismissed was now potentially saving a life, her skills speaking louder than any prejudiced comment he might have made. The aircraft's communication system crackled. The pilot announced they would be making an emergency landing to get medical assistance. Emily continued her careful monitoring, her touch gentle but professional. Minutes passed like hours. The elderly man's breathing stabilized slightly, thanks to Emily's intervention. Her engineering precision translated perfectly into emergency medical response, understanding systems, identifying issues, implementing solutions. When medical professionals boarded at the emergency landing, they were impressed by Emily's initial care. "You've likely prevented a more serious situation," one paramedic told her, genuine respect in his voice. James watched the entire scene unfold, his earlier judgments completely dismantled. The woman he had quietly criticized had just potentially saved a life, displaying skills that went far beyond any narrow perception he might have held. Emily remained calm throughout, her professionalism never wavering. This was more than just a moment of heroism, it was a demonstration of true capability, of skills that transcended stereotypes and expectations. As the medical team took over, Emily stepped back. She wasn't looking for recognition or praise. For her, this was simply about doing what was necessary, about using her skills to help another human being. The other passengers looked at her with newfound respect. James sat quietly, his earlier comments now feeling small and insignificant. Sometimes, actions speak far louder than words. And Emily's actions had just spoken volumes. The emergency landing had changed everything. The aircraft sat quietly on the ground, medical teams bustling around, and the passengers remained in a state of subdued shock. Emily Roberts sat back in her seat, her hands slightly trembling from the adrenaline of the recent medical intervention. James Thompson watched her, his earlier prejudice completely shattered. The woman he had quietly criticized had just potentially saved a life. His expensive suit suddenly felt uncomfortable, his previous assumptions feeling like cheap, worn-out clothing. I don't know what to say," he stammered, breaking the silence between them. Emily didn't immediately respond. Her eyes were fixed on the window, watching the medical team work. She had done what needed to be done. There was no desire for recognition, no need for praise. The airport staff moved with practiced efficiency. Paramedics carefully transferred the elderly gentleman to a waiting ambulance. Emily wondered about his family, about the life that had been potentially saved in those critical moments. James cleared his throat. "You were remarkable," he said softly. The words felt like an apology, a recognition of something more profound than just her medical skills. She turned, meeting his eyes for the first time. No anger resided there, no desire to point out his earlier remarks. Just a calm, professional understanding that transcended their earlier tension. "It's part of being prepared," Emily responded simply. Her voice carried the weight of years of training, of understanding that skills were about more than just professional achievements. The other passengers began to look at her differently. Whispers of admiration replaced the earlier background conversations. A young woman near the front asked a flight attendant about Emily, wanting to know more about the person who had stepped up in a moment of crisis. James fumbled with his briefcase, pulling out a business card. "I work with Aerospace Innovation Funding," he said, his tone completely transformed. "Would you be interested in discussing your current project?" Emily recognized the olive branch for what it was. Not just a professional opportunity, but a moment of genuine human connection. The barriers of prejudice were crumbling, replaced by something more meaningful. Perhaps, she responded, taking the card. Her fingers traced the embossed letters, understanding that opportunities often came from unexpected moments. The airport staff began preparing the aircraft for continued travel. Passengers started gathering their belongings, their conversations now centered around Emily's quick action. The elderly man's potential survival became a story of hope, of human capability. Outside, London's skyline waited. Grey clouds hung low, a typical British morning promising uncertainty and potential. Emily felt a sense of calm washing over her. This journey was about more than just a business presentation. James continued to steal glances at her, his earlier confidence completely replaced by genuine respect. The world of professional engineering suddenly felt smaller, more connected. "My daughter is studying engineering," he mentioned casually. "I think she would be inspired by what you did today." Emily smiled slightly. Not a wide grin, but a subtle acknowledgement. Sometimes, inspiration came from the most unexpected moments. From quick actions. From breaking down invisible barriers. The aircraft's doors opened. Passengers began to file out, their movements slower, more deliberate after the unexpected drama. Emily gathered her portfolio, her technical designs now feeling like more than just papers and drawings. As she walked down the airplane steps, the morning air felt different. Crisp. Promising. Full of potential. James followed behind, no longer the dismissive businessman, but someone who had witnessed true professional excellence. The prejudice that had defined their earlier interaction now felt like a distant, irrelevant memory. London waited. Another opportunity. Another chance to prove that excellence knows no boundaries. Emily Roberts stepped forward, her journey continuing. The bustling halls of the London Conference Centre echoed with the sound of professional chatter. Emily Roberts stood near the presentation area, her portfolio tucked carefully under her arm. The morning's unexpected events still lingered in her mind: the emergency on the plane, James Thompson's changed attitude, the subtle shift in perception. Conference attendees moved around her, a sea of suits and professional attire. Engineers, investors, and industry leaders from around the world had gathered for this critical aerospace innovation summit. Emily knew her presentation could change everything. Her hands trembled slightly as she set up her technical slides. Years of research, countless nights of work, and decades of proving herself were compressed into these few moments. The presentation wasn't just about aircraft design, it was about breaking barriers. James Thompson entered the conference room, taking a seat near the front. His presence felt different now, no longer judgmental, but genuinely curious. The man who had made subtle remarks on the plane now looked at Emily with respect. As she began her presentation, the room fell silent. Her voice was clear, confident, explaining a revolutionary aircraft design that could reduce fuel consumption by nearly 30%. Complex technical details transformed into accessible insights, showcasing her exceptional communication skills. The audience watched, captivated. Emily explained how her design could change aviation, reduce environmental impact, and create more sustainable transportation. Each slide told a story not just of technology, but of human potential. Investors leaned forward. Technical experts took notes. And James Thompson sat with a look of genuine admiration. During the question session, hands shot up. Tough questions came from all directions: technical challenges, potential implementation issues. Emily answered each one with precision, her engineering background shining through every response. "How did you develop this approach?" one senior engineer asked. Emily shared her journey. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, being the first in her family to attend university, fighting through countless barriers. Her story was more than a technical presentation, it was a testament to human resilience. James approached her after the presentation. "Remarkable work," he said, offering his business card again. But this time, it felt different. No hidden judgment, just genuine professional respect. My company might be interested in supporting your research, he continued. The transformation was complete, from subtle criticism to potential collaboration. The conference hall buzzed with excitement. Emily's design represented more than just technical innovation. It represented hope. It represented breaking through limitations. News of her presentation spread quickly. Social media began sharing snippets of her talk, her journey becoming an inspiration for young engineers everywhere. The story of the woman who saved a life on a plane and then presented a groundbreaking design captured imaginations. As the conference concluded, Emily felt a sense of peace. The day had been about more than professional achievement. It had been about human connection, about breaking down invisible barriers. Her phone buzzed with messages, interview requests, collaboration offers, messages of support. The world was finally ready to listen, to truly see her potential. Walking out of the conference center, London's afternoon light seemed brighter. The city felt different, full of possibility, of potential. Emily Roberts had done more than present a technical design. She had challenged perceptions, changed minds, and opened doors. Her journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The transformation was complete. The end.